Hi, welcome to COVID-19, the college admissions process and you. My name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the owner and founder of Montgomery Admissions Consulting, a full-service educational consulting company that provides college counseling services to 9th through 12th grade students and law school consulting services to those looking to go to law school or any other graduate school. So a little bit about myself. I have over a decade of experience working with youth and teenagers in a variety of capacities. I spent over 7 years working and managing others at an educational consulting firm. I began helping students through the college admissions process in 2012. I graduated from Princeton University with a degree in English and a French certificate, and I graduated from Harvard Law School recently, and I have been helping students through the law school consulting process since 2015. So I'm really excited to be here with you. I'm really excited to answer your questions about the impact that the pandemic may have on your college application process, whether you are a senior right now trying to figure out what the fall is going to look like, or whether you are a freshman or sophomore trying to figure out how this affects your plans. So people have submitted some questions. I'm going to go through those, and then as questions come in, I am happy to answer them. Great. So one of the questions that people ask is, I'm a senior right now, and I'm just not really sure if I should start school this fall. Schools have not yet decided, not all schools have decided what they're going to be doing in the fall. About 74% of schools say that they plan to open in the fall. But, that's right now, and it's May, and a lot of those are optimistic projections. But, should anything happen between now and then, should there be a second wave, then, those projections can change. About 15% of schools say that they are going to wait to make final decisions until mid-June, early July, so that they can see what the situation looks like. So because of this uncertainty, a lot of students are not sure if they should even go to school this fall. So there's a few things to consider. One is that the decision doesn't solely rest with you. A lot of schools have different deferral policies, and so some schools may let you defer for a year if you want to wait until next year, but some schools are only allowing deferrals for very specific reasons. The online classes is not necessarily a reason that all schools are allowing deferrals, because they believe that they can deliver just as stellar an education online as they can do in person. Some students say, well, maybe it'll be cheaper if I'm going to be online anyways to take classes at a local community college and then transfer in. I want you to be very careful about making sure that you check the policies of the schools that you intend to enroll in. Some schools don't let you come in after taking a certain number of credits or courses at another institution. Some schools don't let you take courses or credits if you're deferring, and they may make you reapply. And you want to also make sure that your financial aid, you'll have to reapply through the FAFSA and the CSS profile, and so your financial aid may change. And some scholarships, may only be available to first-year students, and, if you've taken a certain number of credits, then you may be considered, a transfer student, and there might be different funds available. The other thing is schools tend to say, you need to see that there's meaningful activity or employment or, a reason to defer. And, with everything being up in the air and some things being shut down, a lot of those traditional gap year options may or may not be available. So if you are thinking about deferring, I would really check with your school's policies to see, what is and isn't allowed. A lot of schools may not let you defer for only a semester. It could be, just a whole year situation. And then I would, really ask yourself, what will you do in this time, in this 1 year that you'll defer? And is it maybe not better to start school, even if it looks a little different than you were expecting? But, there could be possibilities for it to open up even, new adventures that you weren't necessarily thinking about. So what is on a lot of students' minds are their grades. So I've had a lot of questions from sophomores and juniors about, their grades. And, my school is pass-fail right now. My school hasn't decided what we're doing with grades. Some schools are allowing you to choose whether you want grades or not. How will this affect my college application process? So for students that, are juniors looking into the fall, the, traditional wisdom from most admissions counselors is that they were going to look at this semester on a trend basis. So if you are always an A student, the admissions officers have no reason to believe that this semester you would not have continued being an A student. Or, if you were all A's and 1B or all A's and 2B's, they're going to expect similar trends to continue. They will look at, okay, how has she always been doing in math? If you have consistently been getting A's in math, they will think that. Now, maybe you're saying, well, that's great for students that have been doing well, but I was really just starting to get in the groove with school, and I hadn't done so well before. But this semester was the semester that I turned it around. What can I do then? If colleges are going to look at it as a trend, won't that hurt me? And so I think that there's a lot of things that you can do there. One is that, let's say, you really struggled in math. And so maybe you got a C first semester or even a D, but you had really turned it around and you were going to get an A this semester. Hopefully that's a teacher that you have formed strong bonds with and they have really seen you improve, and that's an opportunity for that teacher to write a recommendation letter. And in that recommendation letter, that teacher can talk about how much you've improved and the perseverance and effort that you've put in and how you've done consistently well this past semester, even amid the changes with COVID. And that can really go a long way. Without grades being as reliable a factor in the second semester, things like letters of recommendation are really going to matter. School rank, those extra soft skills such as your extracurricular activities, your essays, all of those are going to play a much larger role in your admissions this coming cycle, since the second semester grades aren't necessarily going to be a reliable measure. Traditionally, your grades are the most important factor in college admissions. People ask all the time, what is the number one thing that colleges are looking for? And, a lot of people think it's SAT scores, but actually, when asked time and time again, and after speaking to admissions counselors, they consistently say, grades are the number one factor, grades and strength of program. So they want to see that you are taking the hardest classes, or, the hardest classes for you at your school, that you're taking advantage of all that your school has to offer, and that you're excelling, So they don't want to see necessarily straight A's in courses that aren't so hard or courses that, you weren't challenging yourself in. They would rather see a B in, a truly advanced, maybe college level course than an A in a course that was beneath your potential. And so, your grades really are the most important thing when it comes to college applications. And I know that's why there's a lot of anxiety about the pass-fail grades and the choose-your-own grades. And all of that is wrapped into this question of equity. Is it equitable to allow some students to have grades because, they are able to work from home, they have reliable internet, they have access to computers and laptops and devices, whereas other students maybe are not able to be as engaged in their learning right now because they don't have access reliably to, technology, or they have other duties at home, or they're an essential worker. A lot of students are, working right now and not spending as much time at school because they're supporting their families. And so a lot of that goes into the discussion and, the determination of whether or not it's equitable to have grades. And, there's a difference between equity and fairness because, of course, that student that has really persevered in AP biology this year, wants the grades. And so it's a complicated decision. There's no one right or wrong way. But universities and colleges are aware and are sensitive to the issue. And the thing to remember is that they've made the same decisions themselves. A lot of these colleges have gone pass-fail for the second semester of this past school year. So they understand the implications that go along with it. So, they're not blind to that. So, another question that people tend to ask is, okay, well, we talked about grades. What about testing? What should I do with that? So, the ACT and the SAT have been releasing a lot of changes lately, and several schools are going test optional for this upcoming year because of the inability for students to take the tests, and the uncertainty that they will be able to take the tests, especially as we look to early action deadlines and regular decision deadlines. So early action is that November 1 date. Really, that means that you are saying, this is a school that I'm really interested in, and I am really prepared, and I want you to consider my application in the best light possible. There's a difference between early action and early decision. Early decision demonstrates the same amount of interest, but it's binding. So it says, if I am admitted to the school, I'm coming. So naturally, you can only apply to one school early decision, whereas, you can apply to maybe multiple schools early action because it's not binding, and you do have until May to make your decision, whereas with an early decision school, you don't have that kind of flexibility. If you get in, you are expected to attend. So, and then regular decision is usually in December and January. That's just your normal application timeline, and you find out in February or March. So the question is, how do I navigate testing with this? How do I get all my tests in? Should I even worry about taking these tests? It seems like a lot of schools aren't even taking them, so maybe I should just save my money. So basically, it comes down to a couple of things. First off, there's a difference between schools being test optional and schools being test blind. So test optional means that they will not hold it against you if you do not take the test. It won't negatively impact your scores or your admissions profile. That's not the same thing as test blind, because in a test optional school, if you still send your scores, they will look at it and it could help you. Or if you send poor scores, it could hurt you. And that's how it's always been with test optional schools. You can choose to send the scores and it may help you and it may not. Test blind school means that they're not going to look at your scores even if you send them. There are a couple schools that have decided to go test blind for this year because they recognize that there may be some students who, have been able to take the test, while there are other students who will not have the resources, the opportunities to take the test, and they kind of want just a blank slate, one even playing field. So they are test blind. The majority of schools are not test blind. The majority of schools are test optional. So what that means is that if you do have the opportunity to take the test, and I do suggest this to my students, you should plan to take the test. So when are these tests? So the ACT has a June test and a July test. The ACT has not canceled nationwide testing. They have instead left it up to the individual areas, governments, to school test centers to decide whether or not they want to close. It's currently slated for June 13th with a makeup date on the 20th. More than likely, people will not be testing in June. Some test centers may open in June, but more than likely it's not going to happen. The July test, however, there's a pretty good 50-50 chance that depending on where you are in the country, there may be test centers that are offering that date. So those are July 18th with a makeup date of July 25th. And then, of course, there's the August tests and the September tests. My recommendation to many of my students is to plan to take the August test because there's a higher likelihood of the August test going forward. You want to study as close to the test as possible. So, either plan to take the July test or plan to take the August test. Depends again on the area of country that you're in. If you're in New York City, I don't really think that the July test is probably going to happen. If you're somewhere more rural or a smaller state, it's possible. So, you do want to try to take the test if you are, someone that is naturally maybe a good test taker, or even if you're not, if you have the resources to have a test course this summer, to, have a tutor, or, get some study books on your own, then absolutely plan to take the test. In September, the ACT is also supposed to be rolling out computer-based testing and sectional testing. I think that may be a little delayed because of where we are right now. The SAT has said that they are planning an at-home test in the fall if schools don't open, and the ACT has said that they are planning an at-home test in the late fall, early winter. I say, if possible, try to take a test in person. A few schools have already come out and said that they aren't going to accept the at-home test. AP exams started this week, and there were already some issues with students being able to submit their answers, get things to upload with the, portal timing out on them. So we're already seeing some discrepancies and some issues with the at-home testing model. Schools and universities are concerned that, having the at-home SAT and ACT model, may not be the most fair. However, it's still May. So, in September or October, when they plan to roll out these, online tests, at-home tests, we may be in a different situation. Okay, I'm just going to grab another question. So, this is for rising seniors, or rising college freshmen, actually, current seniors. Will tuition be discounted if school is online? Now, I will say that I, as an independent educational consultant, a private college counselor, I spend a lot of time talking to various admissions officers in webinars, in conferences. Part of being an independent educational consultant means that I go through training. So I've been trained through the University of California, Irvine, and I, am a member of several professional organizations, the Independent Educational Consultant Association and the Potomac and Chesapeake Association of College Admission Counseling. I have ethical standards that I uphold, but then again, I also have professional standards that I uphold. So part of that is, talking to admissions officers and really being knowledgeable and informed about the information that I'm delivering. And, if you're ever thinking about hiring a counselor, those are the things that you want to ask. What is your training? How do you stay current on trends? What kind of professional development do you do? So, in conversations with admissions officers about this notion of discounting tuition, almost time and time again, the answer is probably no. There will not be a discount on tuition. Now, of course, that is the subject of a few lawsuits, notably against Columbia and some other schools that students have lodged because of the, disruption in education from last semester, and they're saying that their online education wasn't the same quality as their in-person education. That notwithstanding, most schools are, staying pretty certain about the fact that there won't be a discount on tuition. Now, of course, if they're online, there won't be room and board. Some of those fees that you may see, facility fees, other sorts of, fees that go along with being in person on campus, you won't have those either. So it will be potentially a cheaper year in school, although I have seen some schools actually have raised their tuition a little bit, I think, to recoup some of those lost revenue streams. Schools are worried a little bit about their enrollment. It's projected that enrollment might be down about 20% for the incoming year. So, they are also trying to, protect their finances and make sure that they're in a healthy position, which, leads to the question of, well, how do I know if the school that I'm planning on attending is going to be financially stable? I've heard of some schools closing, and there have been a few schools that have closed because of the economic situation and having to give refunds to students. And, there's a few different ways that you can check the health of your school. You want to check, first off, the endowment is one way that you can check the health of the institution. You also want to see about the health of the graduates, whether they are giving back to the school, whether they are, having defaults on their student loans, some things that you can do. There's also the college scorecard that is really great at giving you a financial and just overview snapshot of what the school financial health and academic health is, what their graduation rate is, what their retention rate is, which is so big. Retention rate is the number of students that come back year after year, whether they're losing students in the crack. So those are some things that you can do to check the health of the school, to say, okay, yeah, this school, I think they'll be able to continue to survive, several more years, hundreds of years past the pandemic, or this school, is really a little bit maybe on the rocks. And so you just, you want to be making sure that when you are talking to admissions officers, the schools that you're thinking about, you want to, talk to them about what they project maybe the tuition increase going, or whether they see there might be a tuition freeze. Some schools have a policy where, the tuition that you get in is the tuition that you have all 4 years. So those are some things that you want to be thinking about. There is also a question about wait lists. So if you are a senior right now and you have made a decision, but your heart is really set on another school, you want to know, are the wait lists moving this year? And overwhelmingly, I think the answer is going to be yes, but that will depend, of course, on the school. Some schools will have more waitlist movement than others. So usually a phenomenon happens that's called summer melt. And basically, summer melt is the tendency for some students to graduate high school, commit to a school, but then either because of finances or missing administrative checkboxes, not filling out some forms, not fully enrolling, they don't end up on campus in the fall. So summer melt is looking to be projected higher than normal, and that's almost like 40%. And there's a number of reasons for that. So, when surveyed, about 1 in 5 high school seniors said that they were thinking about making a different decision for college than they originally were. Either one of their parents had lost their job, or, for health reasons, or they want to stay close to home. So students have been making some different decisions. And some of that, unfortunately, is students who have decided to go to college, or deciding that, they really need to stay home and work, or, their health is not in a position where they can go to school. So, as I mentioned earlier, it's projected to be about 20% dip in enrollment for schools in the coming school year. So, schools are concerned about their ability to fill their class, about enrollment, and so they will be going into wait lists. Now, students who are making different decisions almost overwhelmingly are making the decision to stay home. So you may not see that kind of waitlist movement at a flagship, public state school. That is the school that students are coming home to. But you may see that kind of waitlist movement at more expensive, smaller schools where, parents may have been able to afford it before the pandemic, but with the pandemic, they're making different decisions. Those are the schools that may be going into their wait lists. Okay, so another question that we had was about applying for financial aid. And so I can address this both for juniors and for seniors. So, for seniors, there's some questions. We didn't think that we qualified for financial aid, so we didn't apply. But now we need financial aid. What can we do about that? So the Department of Justice and the Department of Education has given discretion to schools to make different financial arrangements for students and families that have been affected by the pandemic. So, if you haven't applied, but you now need aid, I would fill out the FAFSA, and I would get in touch with that school, and they are able to actually use your new information, perhaps your reduction in employment, the situation that you find yourself currently in now, and they're able to make adjustments on their end and perhaps be able to give you some financial aid that they otherwise would not have been able to give you. If you already filled in the FAFSA, but you have a change in circumstances, they're able to go in and actually change your FAFSA to come up with a different estimated family contribution, or EFC number. So there's a lot of things that you can do there. The most important thing is to get in touch with your school's financial aid office so that they can see what options are available. Now, if you are, a junior, and you're saying, okay, well, my 2019 taxes are going to show one thing, but my family circumstance right now is different. What do I do? The reason I mentioned 2019 taxes is because when you fill out the FAFSA, which is due, it's not due until, 2021, but it opens up October 1. They're asking for prior year taxes. So that means your 2019 taxes. Well, your 2019 taxes might have a completely different financial picture than your current situation. So you also want to be in contact with your financial aid officer, the schools that you're applying to. If it's a school that takes the CSS profile that's run through the College Board, that is what gives institutional aid, as opposed to the FAFSA, which is for federal student aid. So that institutional aid form asks a lot more questions, and you should be able to go into a little more detail. But submit it just the same that you would. Be in contact with the financial aid office, and then if need be, when you get your financial aid award, then you may submit a financial aid appeal. And financial aid appeals are specifically for change in circumstances since the time that you applied, or since the taxes that you submitted. And so this absolutely would fall under that. And that's one reason to actually be applying early. If you apply by November and you get that FAFSA and CSS profile in October, you have a higher chance of getting a decision and an aid award earlier. And the earlier you get that award, the earlier you're able to start talking to that financial aid office and see what other arrangements can be made or what circumstances can be taken into account for your family. So a lot of students are asking, basically of all years, my summer plans were canceled. My extracurricular activities were canceled. What do I do? Especially perhaps you are a sophomore, this was going to be your junior year, or even a junior, this is going to be your senior year, and this was the year that you were going to figure out if you are going to be a biochemist or a music major. You had a music camp, and you had a chemistry camp, and you were going to try to figure it out this summer, and now all the summer camps, you're not going anywhere. And so you're feeling like, I don't know how to start building a college list because I don't know what I want to major in because I couldn't do the summer program. Or perhaps you're the student who didn't, do a lot freshman year summer, didn't do a lot sophomore year summer, which is okay. I'm not saying that, of course, you have to do something every summer. And you are saying, well, this was the summer I was going to, put that really nice internship or that job on my resume, and it was going to look good for college, and now I can't do that. What should I do? So a few things. One, there are a lot of online summer programming happening. And that's one of the things that I work with my students on. I work with my students on finding the best summer programs that are good fits for them. I research summer programs. I have a network of colleagues where we all share ideas on, different programs that we've heard about that may be good fits for our students. And so I'm able to pass that information along to my students to help them get, that summer enrichment that they're looking for. So most of the elite schools that have had those pre-summer programs that you've heard about, perhaps at Brown or Stanford or Columbia, many of them have moved their programs online, and they're still happening. And they're still accepting applications. Some of them have applications going until June. So there's certainly enough time to apply and get accepted to any of those summer programs if that's something that you want to do. Some of those range from 1-week programs to 5-week programs. Of course, they're online and virtual, but they're still able to take those courses, get that instruction from professors, get hands-on experience. I know in terms of architecture camps, they're able to send out the drawing materials that you may have used in class. So a lot of programs are really trying to be creative about engaging their students. Beyond just those pre-college programs, though, there are actually a large number of free summer programs. A lot of programs that were of cost that, if they had happened in person, would have cost maybe a significant amount of money, actually are free now. Some of them have changed their programming format a little bit so it's shorter than it originally was. Some of it is the same exact program, it's just free. And those are fantastic opportunities. There are engineering programs out there. There are girl empowerment programs. There are entrepreneurship programs. There are art programs. There's a wide range of summer programs that, because of the pandemic, have actually become free to students. And some of those do still take an application. There's, programs at Johns Hopkins that are still taking applications. One that comes to mind is they have one on a gun policy. Students that are really interested in advocating for gun policy changes, they have a week-long program that is completely free and virtual. Beyond that, though, there's also courses on edX, on Coursera. A lot of those open course websites are really great. Yale, I know, has a few courses online that are free. There's a lot of enrichment opportunities out there that don't cost anything. And so maybe you've always wanted to, learn about the history of, certain buildings or international relations. There's actually tons of Coursera courses out there, or a new skill. There are dance classes out there. There are, music classes out there. There are acting classes out there. So that's all really great. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight is that you don't necessarily have to do something formal. One thing that this time may have given you is, the ability to pursue a passion, or maybe you had a list of books that you've always wanted to read, but you've always been in AP classes and going here and going there, and you've never had any time. And so maybe you're like, well, this summer in quarantine, I am going to read all these books. And that could be very meaningful. And it could have, an impact on you and your thinking and your perspectives, and perhaps even become fodder for a really great essay. And maybe, you're at home and you're taking care of your siblings or your grandparents, or like I said, you're an essential worker. That is something that is also valuable. You don't have to do something that fits into a box. I know that there's this tendency to say, oh, well, I have to do something super meaningful. I have to show colleges that I'm really taking advantage of this time. And I encourage you to kind of relax from that mindset a little bit, and, use this as a time to be, mindful about the things that you are actually interested in, and see how you can grow from this. I see there's a comment that the live keeps pausing, but I am not quite sure. So I'm going to hope that the live continues to go smoothly. But if not, this is being recorded, and I will absolutely post this on my page, and I will post this on my Facebook, and I'll post this on my Instagram story, and I will send it out so everyone can get kind of a copy of that, because I know there were also some people that wanted to watch this but couldn't watch it live. So another question that came in is, okay, so what about, I see a comment that says the Facebook Live is a little bit smoother than the Instagram. So thank you for that. So there's another question about, okay, well, I was supposed to get recruited. This is my junior year, or second semester sophomore year, and this was my time to get recruited, and now my sports has been canceled. What should I do? And so one of the things that I don't want you to do is do nothing. A lot of students say, oh, okay, well, I'm not playing. No coaches are coming to watch me, so that's it. Don't do that. First off, admissions officers have been really open and willing to talk to students during this time. I think that is one of the silver linings, actually, of the pandemic is that admissions officers are way more accessible than they have ever been. They are so happy to jump on a Zoom call with you, on a FaceTime. They're happy to, talk to you on the phone, to email you if you have questions. They know that you can't, visit a school right now. And that kind of goes into the question of, well, how do I build my college list right now if I can't visit? Recruiters know that it's a very interesting, challenging time. So if you are trying to be recruited, I strongly suggest that you reach out to coaches of schools that you're interested in and introduce yourself. Say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I go to this high school. I'm really interested in your team and your program. This is a little bit about me. This is why I think this school would be a great fit. I would really love to set up a Zoom call and learn more about your team, your program, your school. Admissions officers and recruiters are very, very open to that right now. If there is a way for you to get some practice footage, maybe you're not, in the field, on the track, with your teammates, but maybe you can get some drills in at home. If you play basketball, maybe you can get some practice drills and your mom can take a video, or you can, run some sprints, or, you can do any of your sporting activities at home and have a live video of it and send it to the recruiters. That could count as well. Oftentimes athletic recruiters say that they don't, necessarily prefer, and I hear this from performing arts auditions as well, like they don't necessarily prefer the super high quality, professional videographer. They want to see what you're going to look like, on the team. They want to see what you look like in the field, like real life. And so if you're able to get, still make it good, still, make sure you're putting your best foot forward and the video is representative of who you are as an athlete, or if it's performing arts, who you are as a dancer or a singer. But then send that in and that really nice email introducing yourself, and have that organic connection with the athletic recruiter or the performing arts recruiter or the admissions officer. And, try to foster it that way, because right now, especially athletic recruiters, they're just sitting by their phones. They're not able to travel like they normally would. They're not able to see students like they normally would. And so they are so happy when students email them, when students call them, and they're ready and waiting for you. So that is what I would recommend you do if you are a student athlete who has, feeling like this has disrupted their whole plan of being recruited. There is definitely still an opportunity for you. And you never know it also, like what their recruiting season might look like. There may have been students who were recruited and then had to make different plans because of COVID, which might have opened up the opportunity for you. So, I really encourage you to do that. Okay, some other questions. So I guess I want to talk a little bit more about how to build that college list. So I actually have a blog post on my website about what to do if your admissions event or tour or admitted students day was canceled. How do you go about that? One of the really great things about working with an independent educational consultant or, a private college counselor is that part of our job is to visit schools. So I have been on school visits. Like I said, I've spoken to admissions officers. I have gone to trainings, and I get a lot of information. I do a lot of research on knowing what these schools stand for, what their community is like, what their culture is like, what their programs are. That's the value of having an independent counselor, is, the knowledge that we bring about colleges. But even if you don't have an independent counselor, you can still get a lot of knowledge from the schools themselves. So normally, yes, visiting is a really great way to get a feel for the school, but a lot of schools have been doing more with their virtual tours, their virtual events. So, there's a lot of really great websites like UVisit, University TV, Campus Reel. Those are all phenomenal for online virtual tours. They have, UVisit, I know, has a lot of great information. You can kind of walk around through the school and, it's almost, it's like a virtual tour, and they're pretty in-depth. you visit, or University TV does these videos, and they have cameos with students, and you can get real snapshots of student life. And so I think those are truly fantastic videos. A lot of schools have YouTube channels where they have put out their own videos, their own promotional videos about what life is like, a day in the life. I love the Campus Reel videos because they, are from students. So it's a student taking you into their dorm room, or to the game, or to the, sorority meeting, or the dining hall. So you feel like you're really there. It's not a polished version. It's just, this is what real life is at this school. So I highly suggest that you take advantage of some of those virtual options. A lot of schools are having virtual admission sessions where the admissions officer will do a webinar with, a full presentation, usually a PowerPoint or a slide deck, where they talk about the school, the different majors, the different offerings, and some admissions information that you may need to know for that coming year. And then it also provides you a good point contact to contact them. A lot of schools also track what's called demonstrated interest. Not all schools do, but some schools, demonstrated interest is a part of the admissions process. So they, track, did you open the email from the school? And a lot of students are kind of blown away when I say, yes, they do know if you opened the email or if you just put it in the trash. They also know if you clicked on a link in the email. So, I know a lot of sophomores and juniors are like, I just keep getting so many emails from colleges. It's just too much. Take a breath. Learn how to make some labels and folders in your email. This is one of the reasons why I suggest getting a separate email that you're going to give to colleges, because you're going to get a lot of emails. But you want to make sure that if there's a school that you're interested in, it didn't get buried down, in email number 450 of 575. You want to make sure that you opened that email and you clicked on some links, and maybe you registered for an event. Those admission sessions that are virtual sometimes have some registration information, and they really do keep track of that. And, they keep track of, the student, emailed me to set up a Zoom call to learn more about the school, or did an optional interview. So those are some ways that you can, stand out pretty easily just from showing interest in a school that you're already interested in. It's nothing that kind of goes out of your way or something that you wouldn't want to do normally. I think that sometimes we just have this thought that, I can't contact the school, but yes you can. But that contact should come from the students and not the parents. Because they want to see that your student is taking ownership of the process. And that is something that I really stress with my students. I am encouraging my students. I am empowering my students. I am helping them be confident and reach their potential. And that means also reaching their potential, with themselves on their own. I'm here to support them. But I think it's important that students make that transition from being, dependent to independent. And I help them see their strengths and their skills and, the things that make them unique and that can give them the tools to say, okay, yeah, I can do it. I can take this initiative. And then come back and tell me how it is so we can workshop it and see how we can do better the next time and the next time, so that it's just, you feel completely confident in taking ownership of this admissions process. We just have a couple more questions because I know that we're almost done. Let's see. So some students want to know, should I plan to write about the coronavirus on my application essay? And I know that there are definitely some mixed views about this. I will say that through some talks with the Common App, although it hasn't been fully released yet and nothing has been fully set in stone, there have been discussions that the Common App will have a separate question for you to explain one time to all of your schools some context about how this pandemic affected you. And there also is said to be a place for counselors and teachers to maybe explain what disruptions they had, because every school system has been different. Some school systems, switched online, got right into it, class all day, nothing changed. Some school systems did not teach new material at all. So, there's such a wide range of what distance learning looked like. And so, I think that having that place on the Common App for counselors and teachers to kind of comment on maybe the disruptions that they had in their school and how that affected their students' learning is a really good opportunity that I'm glad that the Common App is taking, and I think it'll be good for students as well. Now, I've heard from some counselors, some admissions officers at schools that if the Common App does not have that place, that they will probably ask their own supplemental question, because they still want students to write that personal statement, that Common App essay about something, other than the pandemic, about something that has, a part of their personality, a part of their journey, what makes them who they are, the obstacles and values that they've gone through. They want them to be able to write about that in a narrative format. And so, but they also know that this pandemic is, truly life-changing for a lot of students. It's affected us all in many different ways, and they do want to hear about that. So I think it will be something that students should expect to write on this year, honestly, probably next year as well. I don't know about the following years, but certainly this year, and I think probably next year as well, it will be a question, maybe how did it affect you, or what did you do during this time? And again, I'm not saying that you have to go out and make 1 million face masks and, volunteer thousands of hours, although making face masks at home is a really great way to use your time during the pandemic. But they just want to know how it affected you so they can have context. Going back to that, how are my grades going to affect me if it's pass fail? The more context they have about your situation, your school situation, the more they'll be able to look at your application holistically when making those decisions. So I usually encourage students when they are writing their essays to really think about the values that they have, the obstacles that they have been through, the things that make them unique, and accomplishments that they have. Now, there may be some overlap in those categories. And I will say it's actually, a little difficult for most students to really sit down and think. So I have an entire brainstorming process that I go through with my students to get them to think about these things, several brainstorming modules and quizzes and activities and exercises that really help them feel confident when they get to that stage. And I like to say that a really great essay will include, a few things from, a few different categories, because I think the best essays are multifaceted. You don't have a ton of space to show admissions officers who you are. And not all schools do interviews. And so I encourage my students not to make the essays one-dimensional. Even if there's one subject, there might be a couple little tidbits that you throw in. The best essays are narrative, in part. I always say show, don't tell. They're descriptive, they're well-written, they've got great grammar. And honestly, students always ask, well, is there one thing I should write about? It's really not about the topic of your essay. It's really about how well you write the essay. You could write on the same topic as someone else, but your essay should be unique to you. I should be able to read the essay and say, no one else in the world could write this essay because it's your story and no one else in the world has your story. And that's what I really try to encourage my students to do. We workshop our essays until I feel like their voice really comes through. And I think that's so important because going back to the confidence, I want my students to have confidence in their writing abilities. I'm an English major, and so I, really try to give them those strong writing skills that they'll take with them to college as well. But, through the essay writing process, you should grow in yourself. You should become more introspective. A lot of my students say at the end of it that, they really feel like they know themselves better. And that's really what I want. And so when you're thinking about these topics, like I said, yes, you're probably going to be writing on the pandemic in some form or fashion this year and perhaps next year. But you should also be thinking about what are the other parts of me, that I want the schools to see. What has my journey been like? And perhaps this pandemic has, shifted your journey. Like I said earlier when I was mentioning the example about, reading or discovering your passion, perhaps you discover in this pandemic something that you didn't know about yourself, and it's altered your course of study, your course of thought. That is fantastic and absolutely should be written about, even if it's, in addition or separate to another question. You really want to be thinking about always what your journey is. And then some students have asked for juniors, current juniors, if the application cycle will be harder this fall because of students who want to defer. So seniors who are making the decision to defer and won't be entering until 2021, if that'll make it harder for juniors to get into school. So what I will say to that is the rate of deferral is not a guarantee. Kind of as I said in the beginning, schools aren't just going to let an entire class of students defer because they're online. They would absolutely lose all of their revenue. So, how many students are going to end up deferring to next year, it's a little unclear still. However, I'm currently not predicting that it's going to be such an astronomical number that it's going to really change the admission scene for juniors applying in the fall. I say, run your race, apply as you would. I do think that applying early will help, whether it's early action or early decision, if your family is able to make that choice. But, as many schools as you can apply early, I think that will help as schools are beginning to see what their numbers are looking like. But honestly, I think maybe perhaps even the opposite may happen, because if schools aren't able to fill their class for this coming year, and if enrollment is projected to be down 20%, there may be some schools that will need to actually take more students. And with many schools going test optional, like I said, is not test blind, but test optional, you may have the opportunity to even try for schools that you otherwise weren't so sure about, especially if your family is full pay. If your family is full pay, which means that you don't have demonstrated need, then there may be opportunities for you in certain schools that you otherwise might not have been looking at, because those are the schools that are going to be hurt the most financially. If you look at schools, and I'm not going to name any, but, more elite schools, not the Ivy Leagues that, have pretty much endless dollars, but the more elite but very expensive schools who may be hurt by tuition refunds and students choosing to make different decisions right now. If you're a full pay family, they absolutely may be willing to, want you to come so that it can help their dollars a little bit. In terms of, what schools to put on your list and how to financially prepare if you're a junior or rising junior, how to make sure that you, are making smart economical decisions as well. You want to think, okay, am I a full pay family? Am I middle need? We need all the financial aid that we can get. If you have a lot of demonstrated need, which is not the same thing as feeling like you need a lot of money for college, demonstrated need, one of the ways that you can do that is by going to the FAFSA forecaster, by looking at the College Board net price calculators of different schools and saying, how much is my family expected to pay? So if you are expected to pay nothing, 0 EFC, that means that you have a lot of need. Then you are going to be looking at schools that are good at giving need-based aid. Sometimes schools that give a lot of merit aid actually do not give a lot of need-based aid. So you want to look at that. And a lot of schools that give merit-based aid only tend to give it to full-pay students to entice them to come. So you want to be looking at schools that have a lot of need-based aid. You want to put those schools on your list. If you are a full-pay student, meaning that you are not expected to get any financial aid, then you want to be looking at schools that have a lot of merit aid. You don't necessarily want to be looking at schools that are committed to giving mostly need-based aid, because you're not going to get any need-based aid. So you want to look at schools that have a lot of merit aid. A healthy school list probably has a balance, especially because I think a lot of families think that they aren't going to qualify for financial aid and then, realize that they were actually a middle need family. So that's why it's so important to run those FAFSA forecasters. It's FAFSA, the number 4, caster. You can put that in Google. That'll estimate your federal student aid. And then net price calculators. If you go to any school, they are required to have a net price calculator, although it may be a little difficult to find. So actually, College Board, under their Big Futures Tools and Calculators, has a net price calculator there, and you can just put your school in, and it'll pull up the net price calculator for that school, and then you can put your information in, and it'll tell you how much aid, institutional aid, you are likely to get from that school. So those are 2 different ways that you can estimate your financial need and your financial aid. And then once you have that, let's say your family and your estimated financial contribution is $30,000. Okay, so then, you have to say, all right, where can I really go? Let's say your estimated financial contribution is $30,000, but you're saying we can't pay $30,000 next year. Then you need to make sure that you have schools on your list that are either going to give you need-based aid, that you would qualify for need-based aid, or schools that cost less than $30,000 in your net price calculator. A school that's going to cost you like $11,000 because you know that you're responsible for up to $30,000. A $60,000 school is, you're going to have to pay $30,000 of it. And so you want to kind of make sure that you're aware of that. But never just look at the price tag. Always look at what is my family's, EFC, what does the net price calculator say about my family, how much we're going to have to pay. Make a chart, get all the schools on your list, make a chart of all the your net price for each school, and then that'll really give you the picture, because you might be surprised. That $70,000 school, your net price might be $12,000, but that $30,000 school, your net price might be $28,000. So you just never really know until you do the net price calculators, because schools give money in different ways. So I have talked at you for almost an hour. I think that I have answered just about all of the questions that I had come in. People submitted some questions, and so that was really great. A few things, like I said, this video will be available on my Instagram story, on my Facebook page. It'll stay on my Facebook page. That's facebook.com/smontgomeryconsulting. My Instagram is @smontgomeryconsulting. I will also have blog posts going out this week. My website is www.smontgomeryconsulting.com. And those blog posts will actually have many of the answers that I've gone through. If you are a family that is feeling like you want some more dedicated help through the process, absolutely feel free to contact me, email me, DM me, send me a message on Facebook, and I will love to sit down and talk with you about how I can help your family. I am able to help families no matter where you're coming from, your background, or where you are in the application process, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. So thank you so much for watching, and I have a couple webinars coming up in the next few weeks. So if you're not subscribed to my newsletter, please subscribe. There's one for seniors transitioning to college this fall, just for seniors, so I can answer their questions. And then there's one for parents on things that you need to know, HIPAA, FERPA, advanced directives, and all kinds of decisions for students going off to college, or whether they're going off or just going off to your living room. So thanks so much, and I hope you have a great night.